This is show 3, so let's talk Pac-12 North football. Look, Stanford and Oregon are the class of the Pac-12. In fact, they are the class of this division. But the Washington Huskies hope that they can do better than 7-6. That's been their record each of the past 3 seasons. Steve Sarkisian knows this could be a big year because he's got 17 starters back, including nearly everybody back on the offensive side. Keith Price, his senior year at quarterback has arrived now, and it can't be the year he had last year if Washington hopes to get to that next level. Maybe it'll be the season he had 2 years ago where he shined both running and especially throwing the ball. Helping him should be Bishop Sankey, who had a 1,400-yard plus rushing season and was a touchdown machine in 2012. At the wide receiving position will be Casey Williams. He's a good one, but other than that, Washington not very deep in the wide receiving department. Now, the tight end position, this is a solidified area. Austin Safarian Jenkins could be the best tight end in the country. A tall target, soft hands, and NFL scouts love the guy. Could be the Mackey Award winner for best tight end in the country. 69 catches a year ago. The guy can flat out play. Offensive line, good at run blocking, not so well when it comes to pass protection. So watch to see if they can improve that there. Biggest area of concern if you're on the defensive side for Washington will be, can they get a good quarterback rush and also rushing defense. So Andrew Hudson from his defensive end spot and the nose tackle that's going to be Danny Sheldon, they have to have really good seasons. The linebacking core should be the strength of this team. John Timu, your leading tackler from a year ago with 91 stops, he's back, along with a teammate that is Shaq Thompson. And then the defensive backfield, the biggest area of improvement last year for the Huskies was in this department. Top 30 team when it came to pass defense. And they do return strong safety Sean Parker, but they lose Desmond Trufant, who was a first-round draft pick by Atlanta. So that loss could really sting right there. Washington's schedule will begin with the same team it ended with in 2012. That's Boise State. That 2-point stinging loss last year in the Las Vegas Bowl. So if you can beat Boise to start the season and you get them in your backyard in Seattle, then Washington, if they don't already, should have a top 25 ranking entering all the way into October, because the September schedule doesn't look bad for Washington. But there's a 3-game stretch starting in October that looks rough at Stanford, although the Huskies beat Stanford a year ago. And then you host Oregon, and then you go to Arizona State. The second half of the schedule doesn't look too bad, but you have to play at UCLA and at Oregon State. With all that Washington has coming back, they should do better than 7 victories. But on the other hand, I've got issues with Washington on defense, and also, too, I'm just not certain if Washington's offensive line can improve on its pass blocking. So I've got Washington finishing 3rd, but I just can't see them finishing at or above Stanford or Oregon. Looking at Oregon State, though, the Beavers at one point last season were 6-0 and top 10 in the country, and then they lost 4 of their last 7 games. The big reason is because they were having a hard time getting to the quarterback at the end of the season. The defense just didn't hold up. And Scott Crichton, though, I think he really did all he could from his defensive end spot. This guy, fantastic his freshman year, last year even better with 9 sacks. So outside pressure should be good, but inside pressure, they lose out on that. They lost their tackle, so we'll have to see how they do on inside pressure. Linebacking core, Michael Doctor, he's your leading returning tackler, 83 stops for this linebacker. And the secondary, you have experience back with both Ryan Murphy as well as Rashad Reynolds, but you're going to miss out on Jordan Poyer, your fine defensive back, and also punt returner. Offensively, another big reason why the team slumped down the stretch. Sean Minion, we've seen him be good with 15 touchdown passes, but also 13 interceptions. So Cody Voss, the senior backup, has to be ready. And then the running position, as far as the backfield, Storm Woods had over 900 yards rushing, was about to hit 1,000 and then some, but had nagging injuries down the stretch. And then Braden Cooks, your leading wideout back with over 1,100 yards receiving, had a few touchdown catches last year. But they will feel the loss of Marcus Whedon, who is their most valuable wideout. He had over 1,200 yards receiving, not to mention 11 touchdowns. So that's a stinging loss right there on the receiving end. But you do have an experienced offensive line back. For Oregon State, their schedule, it should start off like last season's, where they should be able to get on an early winning streak. In fact, first 7 games looks easy, but the last 5 games look brutal. Playing at home against Stanford, then they'll have less than a week to prepare for USC, and then that closes out with at Arizona State, and then hosting Washington, and then the Civil War at the end of the year against Oregon on the road. And I think for Oregon State, it almost plays out like last year, where I think they'll start good, but those 5 games in a row at the end, granted there's a bye week in between, I just have issues with the quarterback position right now, and also the wide receiving position if somebody other than Cooks can help out, and also the running game. So right now I'm just not sure about this Oregon State offense, how they're going to do down the stretch. So I got Oregon State finishing 4th, but they are going to go to a bowl game. For Washington State and for Cal, both teams have a lot in common. Both went 3-9 a year ago. Also, both had a hard time protecting the quarterback. Washington State gave up 57 sacks a year ago. But for Cal, they were almost as bad. They gave up a ton of sacks as well. In fact, they were 115th in the country when it came to QB protection. The big reason why you don't see Jeff Tedford there anymore, having a 3rd straight losing season. So for Cal, you're going to bring in a new head coach in the form of Sonny Dykes, a former Mike Leach disciple. And of course, who's the head coach of Washington State? You got it, Mike Leach. How about another common denominator? How about the fact that both teams have major running issues entering this year? Cal loses their top 2 runners from last season, and their leading rusher only had 400 yards a year ago. That's Brendan Bigelow, and his right knee has issues because it was surgically reconstructed. And by the way, Washington State, their running issue is the fact that, by the way, their running game's just no damn good at all. In fact, last year, they did not even have 400 yards rushing for a team. Barely over a yard per carry. The offensive line doesn't know a thing about run blocking. Their running backs are undersized, not strong at all. Unless they can get a big-time makeover when it comes to the running game. I know it's a pass-happy offense, but you got to be two-dimensional in some way, shape, or form. The Washington State's offense, again, is going to have it very, very difficult. Now, both teams, by the way, deep at receivers. You would expect Cal going to the spread attack this year, and Bryce Treggs will be the main wideout. Of course, you might remember his dad, Brian Treggs, started at Cal in the early 90s. Chris Harper and Richard Rogers should help out the wideout positions. And, of course, Washington State, again, going to that spread, and it will be Dominic Williams and there's Gabe Marks, and the leading receiver is Bobby Ratliff. Washington State, though, will have the edge as far as QB position because they have experience. Connor Holiday, 15 touchdown passes a year ago. He shared time with Jeff Toole, who's no longer there. And then for Cal, the Zach Maynard era is over. So it looks like Zach Klein. It'll be Klein time. He's a redshirt freshman. Right now, he's got the edge for that starting QB position. But ironically, it could be a defensive player for both teams who could be their most quality player. For Washington State, Deion Buchanan at free safety, a guy that really slipped through the cracks from a lot of Pac-12 teams. And he did all he could last year, 106 tackles and had 4 interceptions. He's a dandy for the Cougars. For Cal, DeAndre Coleman, the only senior starter on that side of the ball, 6'5", 320 pounds, NFL-type body, and last year had 48 tackles. Both teams rushed the quarterback pretty good, but defending the run and defending the pass when you're 3-9, obviously major issues for those teams. So we'll see if there's any type of improvement at all. Washington State playing the 3-4 defense. Cal going to play the 4-3 after playing that 3-4 defensive alignment. For Washington State, the schedule, weeks 3 and 4, buy your tickets up now in Pullman because it looks like those are going to be your best shots at seeing a win. Southern Utah as well as Idaho, it looks like those are the 2 games right now would be your best opportunity to see a W. Of course, Pac-12 play, don't see any wins at all for Washington State. For Cal, one of the toughest schedules in the country by far. If you look at the Golden Bears, opening the season up with Northwestern from the Big Ten, that's tough. 2 weeks later, highly ranked Ohio State, that looks impossible. And then 5 of the 9 games that add insult to injury are all in succession, no bye weeks in between, and 5 of those 9 games are on the road, including, by the way, the 3 toughest teams in your division, Oregon, Stanford, and Washington, all away from Berkeley. But at least you get to play Colorado, so that should be a victory. And you host Washington State, that should be another victory. I do see a little bit of a brighter future for Cal in that crystal ball because they're playing far more underclassmen. So maybe in a year or two, Sonny Dykes' team can get the bowl eligibility. For Washington State, I don't even think Nuke Rockney could coach this team to a bowl bid anytime soon, much less a Pac-12 North Championship. Mike Leach has inherited a team that talent-wise just doesn't stand a chance against virtually anybody. I know they beat Washington last year for the Apple Cup, but every now and then, probably get a conference victory, But when it comes to week in and week out play, just far behind everybody else in terms of recruiting, and especially when it comes to just flat out competing. I've got Washington State dead last. I've got Cal 5th. For the Oregon Ducks, Chip Kelly, 4 years, 4 BCS bowl games, 3 Pac-12 championships, including a national championship appearance in 2010 where they barely lost to Cam Newton and Auburn back in 2010. Last year, they didn't win the Pac-12, but they lost just 1 game, heartbreaking loss to Stanford. By the way, they still won a BCS bowl game that year against Kansas State. The guy lost very few times. And to quote Mr. Pike from the movie Star Trek, I dare you to do better. But now, Mr. Kelly, he's off to the Philadelphia Eagles to become your head coach. And better news, if you're Oregon, those big sanctions that you thought was going to level your program, well, they turned out to be minimal. And by the way, no postseason ban, no conference ban. So for Oregon, they can march on. And for defenses out there, beware. So now you have Mark Helfrich, former assistant coach, quarterbacks coach as well, and he knows the offense just as well as Kelly did. And now you've got Marcus Mariota. Sophomore year, things could be Heisman Trophy bound if his freshman year and his sophomore year are any way, shape, and form similar in terms of the stats. 32 touchdown passes, only 6 interceptions last year for the Oregon quarterback. And by the way, he ran for 752 yards as well. He's lethal. How about DeAnthony Thomas? Terrific runner and also returns kicks. I know that Oregon, by the way, did lose Kenyon Barner, but don't feel sorry for Oregon because they're going to be deep in the backfield. Thomas Tyner, he is a 5-star recruit from high school a year ago. He'll get into the mix, and don't forget about Byron Marshall as well. Oregon's deep at receiver with Josh Huff, and it is a very good offensive line with guard probably being the most inexperienced area, although Evan Bowler, he's the number 9 guard in the country out of high school football last year. He might even get into the mix this year, but they are inexperienced at guard. The area of concern right now, if you're Oregon, would have to be your front 7, though, on the defensive side, where 4 of the 7 won't be there, and that does include Deion Jordan, who is so valuable, as well as linebacker with Michael Clay. So getting a good pass rush, which Oregon did such a good job of last year, that could be an area of adjustment. So now you really need Taylor Hart from your defensive end spot, the other defensive end, who had 8 sacks from a year ago, to even have a bigger year in 2013. But the secondary will be the biggest strength, where you have 4 players coming back, including Terrence Mitchell, and of course the household name. He'll play in the NFL soon, and he will definitely make an impact, and that's Ife Ekpre Alamu. The guy had over 20 passes defended. He's a fumble-forcing machine, had 4 picks. The guy is flat-out aggressive, and he is a highlight reel. A lot of fun to watch. He'll be an All-American this year. The Oregon schedule plays out very well. It's easy as far as the non-conference part. 3 games to watch out for if you're Oregon. Will be the game at Washington in early October. Of course, they got to watch out for Arizona as well in late November. And of course, the big one, November 7th at Stanford. Has to be a revenge game for Oregon, the team that costed the Ducks the Pac-12 North Championship outright and a shot at the national championship. So Oregon, I know, has that game penciled in. I'll talk about Oregon as far as where they're going to finish in the North at the end, not at the end of the show, but probably about 2 or 3 minutes. For the Stanford Cardinal, of course, so much for this team having a, not saying a down year, but a year in which they were going to take a step back because Andrew Luck's no longer there. Yeah, the passing game did not flourish for the Pac-12 champions, but they learned to adjust, and they learned to adjust because they relied on that ground game. But Stephon Taylor, the school's all-time leading rusher, isn't there. But getting back to the passing game, they started with Josh Nunez, but they ended with Kevin Hogan, who went 5-0 as a starter for the Cardinal. And I know the passing game did not even finish in the top 90 in the country, but now Hogan has a full year. Of course, he had the spring to develop, so I will look for that passing game to do just fine. I know the 2 tight ends are gone. Levine Toilolo and Zach Ertz are gone, but they got 2 new tight ends coming in. And if you look, too, at the receiving position, Ty Montgomery looks like the main guy. But the passing game, they've got some early season games that don't look difficult, so I would look for Stanford to try to develop that passing game in time for the meat of the schedule, which will be, of course, the second half of the schedule. Looking at the ground game for the Cardinal, it looks like Tyler Gaffney will be, I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Stephon Taylor, but he does bring power and he does bring speed. And didn't see him last year because he played minor league baseball. Barry Sanders Jr. looks a little bit like his dad in terms of elusiveness, speed, and quickness. David Shaw redshirted him a year ago, so he'll figure right into the mix. Offensive line, one of the best in the country. Other than the center position, they're solidified there with David Yankee, the All-American guard. He returns. And defensively, this squad is going to be right there with Alabama and Florida, one of the best in the country. Even though they do lose Chase Thomas at linebacker, Terrence Stamps at nose guard, and Terrence Brown in the secondary, they return everybody else. That's 8 starters, a defense that only gave up 17 points a game and was top 5 in the country when it came to defending the run. In the Pac-12, how essential is that, especially when you're going to go against the likes of Oregon and Washington? When you can defend the run at a high level, you're going to win games. I don't care if you are trying to develop that passing game. You're going to win games, and you're going to put yourself in the position for the national championship. The defensive line, Ben Gardner, he's a darn good one. But the linebacking core is why Stanford fans are excited. Trent Murphy plays outside linebacker position. He is All-American caliber. And Shane Skove, his senior year, of course, his freshman year, we saw how good he was. Back in 2010, 2011, had the devastating knee injury, suspended the first part of last season, but when he came back, dominated, and this year could be his best year ever. The backfield for the Cardinals in terms of secondary, Ed Reynolds, 6 interceptions, and he's joined by Jordan Richards. Got to remember, Stanford last year had 57 sacks as a team. This Stanford defense, again, is the best in the Pac-12, period, north or south. And if you're looking at that schedule, it plays out very well for them. Starting in October, they get UCLA at home. They got to worry a little bit about that Oregon State game on the road on the 26th. Of course, all eyes will be pointing on November 7th against Oregon. And at the end of the season, they play Notre Dame at home. That was a team last year, one of 2 teams that beat them. Washington was the other game. If you're curious, the Washington game will be on October 5th, and that will be also at Palo Alto. So most of Stanford's money games are going to be at home. That's essential. The USC game, by the way, will be on the road the week after the Oregon game, so Stanford definitely cannot let their guard down. In terms of who I think is going to win the Pac-12 North, obviously it boils down to that essential game on November 7th. Obviously, Oregon's got the edge as far as the offense goes, especially at quarterback. But Stanford playing at home, obviously playing with that terrific defense. I think they'll be able in the fourth quarter to wear down Oregon a little bit with the offensive line, and obviously the defense I think will be able to hold their own. David Shaw, I don't think gets enough credit as a head coach. 2 years there, and the guy I think has only lost 4 games. Of course, won the Pac-12 last season. David Shaw doesn't get enough credit as a head coach in my opinion. Mark Helfrich, I think the guy in time will be just fine as a head coach, but this is his first year as a head coach. Coaching edge goes to Shaw. Home field advantage, plus you're playing the game on natural grass, not on that synthetic turf surface at Eugene, Oregon. So I think that'll play an edge too for Stanford. Home surroundings, and I know sometimes the road team wins in this series, but this year I give Stanford the edge, plus Stanford the confidence because they won last year on the road in Eugene. But this time Stanford playing at home, I think Stanford's going to do it. And I think Stanford wins the game. And I think Stanford will take the Pac-12 North. But I do think Oregon, this will probably be the only blemish on their schedule. And once again, I think they'll get a BCS at-large bid. I'll have my predictions on the Pac-12 South on my next show, which will be show number 4. And then I'll have my prediction on who will win the Pac-12 in general. Hope to see you then for my next show. See you next time.